Dan Steinberg of the Washington Post with Armin and Levac on 104.5 The Team, previewing Thursday night football. Redskins at the Giants tonight, 8:25, this game on CBS. And Dan, we here on your home for New York sports have been picking apart the Giants all week for failing in the fourth quarter at historic proportions. Do the Redskins feel like the Giants have been exposed in their first two games of the year?
I don't know if they feel that way, but that's not certainly what they're saying. I mean, they're certainly trying hard to say all the right things because, remember, this is a Washington team that people expected to be among the worst in the NFL, and now they've probably been a little bit of a surprise. But I don't think they're enough of a surprise yet that they're going to get out there, talking trash about other NFC East teams.
When you look at the quarterback situation in Washington, which is probably the biggest headline there is, do the Redskins feel like Kirk Cousins is the guy moving forward to lead this team on offense?
Well, I think that he's certainly going to be for this season. Whether he is beyond this season is probably an open question. I think something that they were going to try to figure out this year during what they thought was going to be a rebuilding year. And still probably it is, but it's dangerous to make too many judgments after 2 weeks. But if you're judging the division after 2 weeks, man, it doesn't look like anyone really wants to win it. And so maybe the goals have changed a little bit. But I think still this season is probably about figuring out whether Cousins is just kind of a placeholder as they rebuild or whether he's actually someone they can win with.
Dan Steinberg of the Washington Post with Armin and Levac on 104.5 The Team. The Redskins are 1-1. They beat the Rams last week 24-10. Dan, you said so far the Redskins have been a surprise. What about this team has exceeded over expectations thus far?
Well, it's mostly the offensive line and the running game, which is what they have said for months that they wanted to focus on this year. I just think people didn't think it was actually going to work the way that it did. They had two different 100-yard runners in their first two games, something they hadn't done in years, something that hadn't been done in the NFL since 2006, I believe. They held the ball for more than 37 minutes in both of their first two games. That's something that they've only done 3 times now in the last 80 years to start the season with 2 games like that. So they're controlling the clock and they're controlling the way these games are played. They've had long drives. I think last game they had like a 7-minute drive and an 8-minute drive. And if you're going to do stuff like that, it's kind of old school NFC East football, which is not really the way the NFL works so much anymore. But that's what they're trying to do. And if you can do it successfully, at least you're not going to get blown out of any games.
You bring up the controlling the clock with the running game. How much of the defensive success is because they're so well rested during the game? Is this the kind of defense that can take over a game even if the time of possession is a little bit more on the side of the opponent?
No, I think that's a huge thing. I think you're right to point that out. The defense has played pretty well early in games as the offense has gotten the running game going, which has allowed them to kind of feed off of each other. But if there was a game when the offense is not controlling the clock and when the defense was out there for a long period, I think it might be different. And the defensive secondary is what people would consider the weakness of this defense, and they haven't really been tested. Maybe because it's been against Ryan Tannehill and Nick Foles, and neither of those guys have really gone down the field that much. But we thought that the defensive secondary would be a problem, and like I said, it hasn't really been much of an issue yet. But they haven't been tested very much. I would assume that Eli and Beckham and those guys are going to go after them tonight.
Dan Steinberg of the Washington Post previewing Thursday Night Football. Redskins at Giants. Dan, what's the one matchup you're looking at in this game tonight?
I think it's going to be Odell Beckham against whoever they try to match up against him. I think that's going to be the key because, like I said, safety has been a problem here forever, and cornerbacks have been in and out. They had Bashaud Breeland suspended for the first game, and then they had Chris Culliver suspended for the second game. So this is the first time that they really are going to have their secondary in one place, and they're going to go against, the best quarterback that they've seen and the best wide receiver that they've seen. So I'm not sure how they're going to match up against them, but to me, that's going to be the most important matchup of the game.
Will the Redskins beat the Giants tonight?
I don't know. I think people are biased by the market that they cover. I think that if I was forced to pick a side with the points, I would probably take the points, which I think was it like 4 right now?
Yeah, 3.5 to 4, depending on where you got it.
To me, it feels like the style of play that the Redskins have done successfully so far is a style that's going to have a lot of games that get decided in the fourth quarter, which both of their first 2 games have been. Now, both of them wound up being decided by more than 3.5 points, but to me, this is like a field goal kind of game. I don't know who's going to win it, but that's my sense.
Dan Steinberg, Washington Post, at DC Sports Blog on Twitter. Dan, enjoy the game tonight. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks, guys.